Random House Audio presents The Last Station, a novel of Tolstoy's last year, by J. Parini. Read for you by Mark Bramhall, Robertson Dean, Kirby Hayborn, Rebecca Lohman, Richard McGonigal, and Lorna Raver. There was a muddy center before we breathed. There was a myth before the myth began. Venerable and articulate and complete. From this the poem springs, that we live in a place that is not our own, and much more, not ourselves. And hard it is, in spite of blazoned days. Wallace Stevens, Notes Toward a Supreme Fiction.
Chapter 1. Sofia Andreyevna. The year has turned again, bringing us to the end of the first decade of the new century. I write the strange numbers in my diary. 1910. Is it possible? Lyovochka is asleep now, and he will not wake until dawn. A while ago I was drawn by his rattling snore down the hall to his bedroom. His snore sounds through the house like a creaking door, and the servants giggle about it. The old man is sawing wood, they say, right in front of me. They no longer respect me, but I smile back at them. Lyovochka's snoring doesn't bother me, since we sleep in separate rooms now. When we slept in the same bed, he had teeth. They lessened the snore. I sat on his narrow little bed and pulled the gray blanket with the key design up to his chin. He started, forcing a monstrous grimace. But he didn't waken. Almost nothing wakes Leo Tolstoy. Whatever he does completely. Sleep, work, dance, ride, eat. They write about him constantly in the press. Even in Paris, the morning papers adore tidbits of gossip about him. About us, true or untrue, they don't care. What does Count Tolstoy like for breakfast, Countess, they ask, lining up on the front porch for interviews throughout the summer months, when the weather in Tula makes this a pleasant destination. Does he cut his own hair? What is he reading now? Have you bought him a present for his name day? I don't mind the questions. I give them just enough to send them happily on their way. Lyovochka seems not to care. He doesn't read the stories anyway, even when I leave them on the table beside his breakfast. They're of no interest, he says. I don't know why anyone would care to print such rubbish. He does, however, glance at the photographs. There is always a photographer here, snapping away, begging for portraits. Chertkov is the most troublesome. He thinks himself an artist with the camera, but he is just as foolish with that as with everything. Lyovochka slept on, snoring, as I smoothed his hair, the white hair that tumbles on his starchy pillow, the white beard like spindrift, a soft spray of hair, not coarse like my father's. I spoke to him as he slept, called him my little darling. He is like a child in his old age, all mine to coddle, to care for, to protect from the insane people who descend upon us daily, his so-called disciples, all led on, inspired by Chertkov, who is positively satanic. They think he is Christ. Lyovochka thinks he is Christ. I kissed him on the lips while he slept, inhaling his baby-like breath, as sweet as milk. And I remembered a bright day many years ago, when I was 22. Lyovochka's beard was dark then. His hands were soft, even though he spent a fair amount of time with the moujiks, working in the fields beside them, especially at harvest. He did this for recreation, really, for exercise. It was not so much a point of honor then as it would be later, when he liked to imagine himself at heart one of the noble moujiks he adores. He was writing War and Peace, and every day he would bring me pages to recopy. I do not think I have ever been happier, letting my hand darken those pages, letting the black India ink summon a vision as pure and holy as any that has ever been seen or dreamt. Nor was Lyovochka ever happier. He has always been happiest within his work, dreaming his grand, sweet dreams. Only I could read Lyovochka's handwriting. His crab-like hieroglyphs filled the margins of his proof sheets, driving the printers wild. Corrections blotted out corrections. Even he could not make out what he had written much of the time. But I could. I read his intentions, and the words came clear. In the afternoons, drinking linden tea, we would sit for hours by a peat fire, discussing changes. Natasha would never say such a thing to Prince Andrei, I would tell him. Or, Pierre is too simple-minded here. He is not as stupid as he pretends. I would not let him write badly. Nor would I let him drowse in his study or spend too much time on horseback or in the fields. Lyovochka had more important work to do. I drove him to his desk. I was important to him. But I do not matter now. Not like in those early years, as on my name day, September 17th, when I was 22. As slender and beautiful as a daffodil. We had 3 children then. Taking care of them, looking after the entire estate. Lyovochka has never been good with details or management, not then, not now. And copying his manuscripts. My days were exhaustingly full. But I did not complain, even when he spent endless hours chatting in his study with that silly blue-stocking Maria Ivanovna, who had attached herself to him like a limpet. I knew she would not last. Of all the women in his life, only I have lasted. They could not wear me down, and they will not. That was in 1866. I remember because it was the year our blessed Tsar Alexander was saved by the hand of God, a miracle. He had been taking his daily walk in the winter garden when a deranged youth from a well-known family, alas, fired at him with a pistol. The quick hand of a moujik saved the Tsar, dashing the gun to one side. That same night in Moscow, Lyovochka and I attended the theater, as we often did in those days. The performance began with everyone in the audience standing to sing "God Preserve the Tsar." I have never seen such weeping. For weeks after, I gave thanks at special masses held in the chapel of St. Nicholas near the Kremlin. Russians needed their Tsar then. They need him now, though one would never know it listening to my husband and his friends. It is a wonder the police haven't silenced them. If Lyovochka weren't as powerful as the Tsar himself, I dare say they would. Of course, Lyovochka won't hear me on this subject. He despises the Tsar on principle. But in our early days together, he was a monarchist too. He worshipped Alexander, who had freed his cousin, Major General Prince Volknovsky, who had been one of the Decembrists sent to Siberia by Nicholas I. His wife, the princess.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?